Hello and welcome to Talking Point. My name is Sean Michael Small and this is your WESN Content Capital, the only station in the nation broadcasted in HD, WESN Television with a Difference. And today I have to apologize once again on behalf of my co-host, Mr. Keaton Shah. He's still under the weather, but we of course continue to wish him well. It seems as though Carnival, there are some viruses going around, and I do hope those who have had the unfortunate experience of contracting something, it's just the way how it goes, and it doesn't even necessarily take that much exposure to just interacting with public on any sort of level. So I hope all those who might have gotten sick coming out of Carnival, we hope that they also get well soon. Meanwhile, some interesting developments have continued coming out of either yesterday's stories or from events that happened yesterday. So let's start off with the daily review. So of course the substantive Commissioner of Police and her acting deputies. Yes, we have people in the post, but they're acting. They were before the Joint Select Committee on National Security yesterday. For about 2 hours, it was broadcasted live on the Parliament channel, and you could look at it yourself on YouTube. It had a fair amount of questions. No questions with regards to the human trafficking allegation situation, which we'll get into right after this. But there were a lot of questions with regards to various aspects about law enforcement and the potential failures or lackings of law enforcement. Now, off the bat, the Commissioner of Police, Ayla Christopher, she seemed not necessarily the most comfortable at speaking in a forum, which, to be honest, is not that big of a deal. The key is, to some extent, she doesn't have to be great at it. She does have to get used to it, because communicating as well as having the perception of being in control so that people could perceive the situation to be going well. Unfortunately, that does matter to some extent with regards to national security and crime fighting and so on and so on. We've discussed about that at length on Talking Point. However, it's not as though she needs to be the most charismatic individual on the block and able to have the gift of the gab. She just needs to be able to communicate effectively. And over the course of the Joint Select Committee, you could see that she was getting a bit more comfortable. Hopefully she gets more used to it. It could have been that she spent a lot of time in the background, maybe not necessarily so much in the foreground, but unfortunately now when you're the Commissioner of Police, generally speaking, there's no one else to hide behind. There is you first when it comes to dealing or interacting with the public, giving out messages to the public, and then everybody else is technically after. Now, one of the questions that was asked was with regards to improvements in the murder rate. And Commissioner Christopher, she said, well, when she said it, I wasn't entirely sure exactly what she meant. She was looking at a short-term reduction for murders in June and long-term by December, which was ironic given that the question was asking about the murder rate for the year. So when she said long-term by December, I somewhat winced inwardly. I don't know if, depending on she did not necessarily give what results she expected in the short and long term for her plans to qualify as a success, which I think it leaves me somewhat wanting to hear more. What exactly do you mean by short-term June? Because we're already at 100 murders plus for 2 months, so we're on pace to continue what we had last year. Except February last year, the murder rate, I believe, was only 33 murders for that month. Now, we've had months last year that exceeded 60. So to what extent now is this a sign that we're actually accelerating, since we're about 20 murders ahead of this point last year? So when she said short-term June, your short-term measures are going to take about 5 months, 4 months to get off the ground, and then another 6 months for the long-term measures. I'm not too sure if the situation, the problem is the murder rate waits on no one. I understand when people say give her a chance, and ideally we would like to do that, but people are dying. You see, this is not the case where we might lose a little bit of money, or even we might lose a lot of money. This is loss of life. And there are a lot of questions with regards to why is it so bad. She said that the detection rate is 13%. It's not her fault per se, but, and I know that they don't necessarily want to get into too much technical details, but I do wonder if the problem is, by trying to keep things close to the vest, how many of us now are looking at the Commissioner of Police and her deputies, acting deputies, and are thinking, well, I'm not too sure that you have a handle on what it is that really needs to be done. It's a catch-22. You have to find that, you have to ride that fine line of communication in between saying too much and giving away everything, and saying too little, and, well, the public, the government, which includes the opposition, we all just, we don't necessarily have faith that this is going in the right direction. And that could also include the rank and file, and the rank and file's commitment. Leadership is not easy. I still wish her well. I haven't seen anything to say that I lack faith, but I do wish that we heard more with regards to the intentions on the murder rates. Moving on to the next topic before we run out of time. The U.S. is urging action with regards to the senior government official that has been linked to human trafficking. Now, the irony of the situation is, we hear this in the public, so we're getting the press releases and we're hearing the words of the PNM and the UNC and the US Embassy, etc., etc. But we don't actually know who, what, why, how, when. Well, the when is 2020, we know the when. We have a general approximation of the who, senior government official, which technically could mean a member of parliament, that's what the Prime Minister said, or it could be somebody not in parliament. So the US might actually be, there might be somebody in parliament that's involved, but it could also be non-parliamentarians with senior government positions also involved. They haven't specified if it's a group, singular, how far this goes, what have you. But one of the interesting things is, of course, the opposition party has Dewan Maraj and Dr. Rudal Mulal, had a little bit of a war of words. Dr. Dewan Maraj said he is more than willing to speak to the TTPS. But the thing is, the investigation that he was looking at, which was about 7 years ago, so already you're questioning to what extent is it linked. Very much could be linked. Just because of the time gap does not mean he didn't say that there were any resolution to what he was involved with back in 2012, 2015. So that could have just continued. Then again, it could be that the US is looking at somebody else. Who knows, right? But what he did say is there were particular individuals who now hold high office in the UNC regularly supplied Venezuelan and Colombian prostitutes to people in and out of the UNC. Now the problem is, bringing in prostitutes, just that alone, may not necessarily constitute a human trafficking. Sex trafficking and human trafficking would be, for all intents and purposes, you kind of have them against their will. You're forcing them into this, right? If you're not forcing them, if they're going into this with eyes wide open willingly, then that's not human trafficking, it's prostitution. And you know, that's a whole different set of laws, but it's not necessarily what we're talking about. At the end of the day, it's not as though, not all people involved in sex work are doing it against their will. So this is what makes it tricky with regards to how is the US classifying these things. We don't know. There's so much that we don't know. So moving forward, I guess one of the other questions though is, and this is where it's somewhat painful. Now the murder rate detection is 30% with the TTPS. That's what Commissioner Earl Christopher said. To what extent, we haven't necessarily seen any convictions with the human trafficking laws in TNT. So why, if the US is serious about this claim and they have good intelligence and maybe even evidence, what is the holdup? I assume they would have spoken to the police. I assume they would have spoken to other parts of the Ministry of National Security, including, I believe, there's a human trafficking task force. So what is stopping investigations moving forward? Because we haven't heard, well, investigations into this matter are ongoing, so we can't speak about it. We haven't heard that. Nobody said that. So what's the holdup? That's the pertinent question I think no one is necessarily asking with regards to all of these government people. Because, of course, the opposition and the government want to go back and forth. Well, if you want to do it, and you, but at the same time, you're acknowledging, at least the Prime Minister did, that I'm not supposed to be involved. In fact, at the JSC, Dr. Rudal Munilal wanted to point out that civilian leadership was not supposed to give orders of investigations to the TTPS. He made a point of emphasis referring to what happened with regards to the Police Service Commission and its collapse over the appointment, well, of the new commissioner after Gary Griffith's last contract to be the substantive commissioner of police, not to act, ended. Same point I was making yesterday. To some extent, I've had that issue with civilian leadership. Yes, that's what the elected officials are, civilian leadership, trying to potentially interfere with the independence of the position of the Commissioner of Police. So this is a case where I'm not entirely sure if the left hand of the opposition knows what the right hand is doing, because MP Charles should have never phrased his questions the way he did, because he left himself open. It was too subjective to interpretation. It's not effective. Why is the government not doing anything? Well, in the short run, because they can't. It's up to the police. And again, the first question is, you ask, why is it not being investigated? And then you backtrack it to the root cause, the higher cause, or whatever. If you do things in the proper sequence, then maybe you might be able to catch the government in something without leaving yourself room to be questioned with regards to your tact, with regards to your strategy. Because your own colleague, Dr. Rudal, more or less said, well, civilian leadership not supposed to give orders. So for all of those who took, and again, yes, MP Charles, he had a very basic question. I understand this might not have been his intention, but he basically asked the government why you didn't do anything. Well, the government, it's not the government's place per se. They put things in place and then let those systems go. What you're supposed to be doing is questioning, why are these systems you have in place failing? Because that's what it seems like to us. Last story, quick, I guess I can't get into it too much. Murder rate continues to climb, as I mentioned before. But the real thing is, and as I implied or alluded to, the criminal justice system doesn't seem to be working. We have a murder accused, he's out, then he himself got killed. To what extent is that a reprisal? I'm not entirely sure. Ironically, though, the criminal justice system does seem to work for those who want it to work, want to make it work. A young adult who was arrested as a teenager pled guilty, Of course, he spent quite some years in remand. He has now been given probation. He has proven to the judge that he is, what's the word? He is contrite. Now, of course, we will see, hopefully this will prove to be an example of rehabilitation working. He's also said some very, not so much new things, they weren't revelations, but he was a young man caught up in a system and he did not think it was safe for him to say no. And because of that, another young man years ago was killed in front of his mother. And that's what we're facing going uphill. It's an uphill battle to try to rectify this. I don't know if we could wait. June, December. Hold on to your seats. This is going to be an interesting ride, 2023. What could happen? The last 3 years, I don't know. I don't think the world is ready to give us a break. Folks, let's take a break though right here. When we come back, I want to go into a topic that I think we need to be discussing it a lot more in TNT because it impacts our prospective development for the future. Stay tuned. This is Talking Point on WESN, your content capital.
The best laptops and tablets are at dbesttoys.com. Get a Gateway 14.1-inch Ultra Slim notebook or an HP 14-inch laptop at the best prices in TNT. Get the Fire 7 tablet for $474. You can also shop the latest Amazon Fire Sticks. Call now at 32-DBEST to order or visit us in-store at Forces flagship Mac Bean. Shop online now at dbesttoys.com. Free delivery available throughout Trinidad and Tobago. Cash or links on delivery.
The issue, the continued rise in the price of flour and its impact on the cost of living in Trinidad and Tobago. How should we go about it? I want to ask you what has been revealed to you about the state of vulnerability in the country because of this exercise and because of what we're going through. Is the government losing the war on the vaccine front?
The discussion should revolve around the common good for the greatest number of people in Trinidad and Tobago.
How do we inculcate a sense of respect and regard for people who may not be of your own political ilk or persuasion?
The communities are now being used by political opportunists. So
when the tables are turned, it's the same way. Okay, this has been 10 questions. I'm Andy Johnson, and we'll see you next time.
FanZone, your reliable, authentic supplier, has just gotten better. You can now visit our website www.fanzonett.com for your authentic wear and collectibles. The only place where you can use both your Visa debit and credit cards. Visit our website fanzonett.com to make your purchase today.
Welcome back to Talking Point, ladies and gentlemen. And Something else came out of the JSC's discussion with the new Commissioner of Police. Of course, she said that the detection rate for murders is 13%. 13%! Which is interesting. We were lucky to have 75 out of the 612 or so murders, unless if I'm undercounting last year's murder rates. 75 were allegedly, detected and solved. But she said 13%, so I guess that's perhaps the ongoing average. And one of the things she said is it's her intention to focus more, that and her executive's intention, to focus more on forensics, DNA testing, etc. However, she referred to Senior Superintendent Rishi Singh, who said the timeline to get ballistics results was usually 6 months unless expedited in special cases to 1 week. Now, for the most part, since more often than not shootings lead to murders or attempted murders, how many special cases, what is the special tier of murder? But then Senator Lakshmi Dayal, who was the questioner in this case, she went on to say she knew of situations where police had to wait a whole year to 18 months. You see, you expedite the special cases, but then it just bumps everything else down the line. And the fact that you could take a week if you expedite tells me, well, we should have the ability to do it in a week. We just don't have the capacity to keep up with demand. So is it that we have a limited capability of equipment, of personnel? We have a technical capacity restriction, or perhaps there might be new technologies we can't take advantage of because we just haven't invested any capital, haven't gotten the new personnel. And this is an ongoing problem. It's not as though other places around the world, they have unlimited, lab capacity for whatever medical, forensics, clinical situation that they need to get over. No, we've seen that they have limitations. However, when we have potentially some cases having to wait for a year and a half to get testing done, it kind of puts things into focus with regards to our situation here in TNT. We're still a developing or emerging economy, and that leaves us with some disadvantages. And one of the disadvantages I want to highlight today, you'll see in today's Cue This.
Brain drain is the process of highly educated and productive participants in an economy leaving their home country to pursue better opportunities in another country. This move can be motivated by better paying opportunities, a better lifestyle, or be driven by people leaving their home countries to avoid violence, corruption, or persecution. Overwhelmingly, the most productive members of economies around the world are moving from developing economies and moving to advanced economies. I am massively generalising here, but advanced economies are normally nicer places to live, with lower rates of violence and higher paying jobs. An engineer in India earns an average salary of 800,000 rupees, which is about $10,000. In India, that's actually a decent salary, but if they can take those expertise and get qualified as an engineer in the United States, they would potentially be earning 10 times that amount or more. An advanced country like the USA, while it has its problems, is also far less crowded and polluted than most areas of India. So, if it is an opportunity that is presented to them, a lot of people from India and a lot of other countries will take it. This hurts the countries they are coming from because they lose their most productive workers, the workers that will pay the most tax, produce the most value, and have the highest chances of driving innovation to make the country wealthier. They also lose these workers right as they stop being an economic burden, which I know is a very mean thing to say about children and students, but that's what they are. They take more money from the economy than they contribute until they go on to be workers. After their working careers, they once again become an economic burden in their old age. This is normally an investment worth making, either for the government or the children's families, because in undeveloped economies, children will go on to look after their parents while they can no longer work, and in developing and advanced economies, the children will go on to produce way more value in their working lives than the government lost to educating them and potentially losing out on their parents' taxable incomes while they looked after them. Almost every major and developing economy around the world today is dealing with some kind of demographic issue where their people are simply not having enough children to continue this cycle of young generations looking out for the elderly. If a majority of people get too old to work, it will put a significant strain on the few young people who still can, either directly as more and more of the workforce gets dedicated to looking after the elderly, or indirectly as young workers are forced to pay higher taxes to cover the costs of looking after an ageing population. This is already happening. The labour force participation rate in most countries is already falling as people are opting out of the workforce earlier than what economists assume. These figures also don't count for the growing population of people over the assumed working age that will require even more care. Low-income and developing countries are going to feel this effect the most because a high portion of their jobs involve physical labour that, unlike service-based jobs in offices, just can't be done by people that are too old or frail. High-income, advanced economies also have another advantage, which is why they stay rich. While low-income and developing economies only get the drawbacks of brain drain, which accelerates the problems they have with ageing populations, rich countries benefit from it by being the sink that those brains drain into, which is just terrible imagery, but you get what I'm saying here. Rich countries that are desirable destinations to live and work will get their pick of skilled young workers who want to move there to start a better life. Most advanced countries can pick how many skilled workers they want to enter their economy simply by increasing or decreasing the amount of skilled worker visas they give out. After the global pandemic and record unemployment rates combined with low labour force participation, a lot of governments are opening up to record numbers of skilled migrants. Not only will these workers help to fix all of the problems of an ageing population, they can also act as a form of economic stimulus. People moving to a new country will need to buy a lot of new stuff to get themselves established. New cars, new furniture, new phones and internet plans, and of course, a new house and everything that comes with it. Whether they are renting or buying, a skilled migrant will be bringing money from their home country into the host country to stimulate the domestic economy. So if this is such a problem that is already stifling the growth of dozens of countries around the world, how can economists stop it? The simple fact is that advanced economies are almost always going to be more desirable places to live and work than developing economies. Not only because they offer higher incomes to workers, but also because they generally have lower levels of corruption, crime and pollution, while also having better access to healthcare, education and other public utilities. Again, of course, this is a generalisation. There are examples of certain developing economies that beat out certain advanced economies in these factors, but it generally holds true, and that's the first thing that can be done to at least slow brain drain. People will be less likely to move abroad if living conditions at home are good, so making sure a developing country is a good place to live is a very important factor in determining whether or not it'll make it to become an advanced economy. Of course, getting rid of pollution, crime and corruption while providing better public services is much easier said than done, but it does highlight the importance of people, even in macroeconomics where the focus tends to be on big industries and trade deals. The other more direct approach countries can take is to invest heavily into industries that have the potential to make them advanced economies. South Korea, Japan and Taiwan, some of the most successful economies of the last 5 decades, all got started with strong government programs designed to build out world-leading technical industries in the country. This is distinct from low-cost manufacturing in places like China or India, and even from services in places like the Philippines. These are industries that are controlled by the greatest innovators, not the lowest bidders. Japan still designs and manufactures a lot of the world's most advanced electronic devices. South Korea is home to dozens of globally competitive companies, and by now I'm sure that you're all aware of just how important Taiwan's industries are to the global economy. Investment in these industries often involves paying lots of money to people so that they move to less desirable countries and provide their expertise for long enough to get the industry off the ground. It's also a risky endeavour with no guarantees of success, and it could just as easily take up a lot of government money that could have been spent on providing public services and getting rid of crime, corruption, pollution and all of the other things that made people want to look abroad for a better life to begin with.
Now the last solution there, our oil and gas sector, to be fair, did bring foreign workers, skilled workers from first world countries down to us. But the energy sector, well, as much as the government has faith in it, and to be fair, as much as we still need it, regardless of what our intentions are with diversification, those days, I think, are slowly but surely coming to an end, or at least it will be sooner rather than later. But we now suffer from our best and brightest in other fields because, yes, that's the energy sector, oil and gas, petrochemicals. But with regards to all of those qualified, whether it's in IT, whether it's in medical sciences, whether it's in even business administration, we have a lot of graduates with business degrees, but to what extent are our best and brightest, our computer scientists, graphic designers, artists? To some extent, it is, for certain professions, natural to want to go on the world stage. And you would even see people, American artists and performers, wanting to be international superstars. I get it, I understand. But they still reside in a first world country. They don't necessarily reside in a country like ours. And in a country like ours, where we have issues with technical capacities, there's a reason why at the end of the day, you have to wait for certain procedures from public health or certain operations or wait to see a doctor or consultations, just for consultations, because we lack the capacity to deal with the demand for certain things. And it's not easy to encourage specialists to come to a small nation where, to some extent, their career and the growth of their career could be potentially limited. In fact, when you look at the United States, one of the things that makes it enticing, the United States and Europe, is that the opportunities are not limited to one city of 1 million or one state of several million, but you do have the potential now to look at the entire United States with the vast amount of cities and opportunities they all present themselves. And you can move from one city to the next as you chase around better and better positions within different and various companies. And in a small nation like ours, we don't necessarily present those opportunities. We have to worry about brain drain and the fact, GATE program, to what extent, yes, it educated our population, but to what extent are we losing some of that investment? And then there's the fact that the lack of opportunities also tie into our crime situation. It's two symptoms that have a similar root cause. But ultimately speaking now, our economy was okay. The oil and gas sector propped it up for a long time. We didn't necessarily have to worry about these things. But just like the video said, now we're looking to raise our retirement age, just like in Europe. Now we have questions with regards to NIS, which is our form of social security or welfare for the elderly, which is our mechanism, or one of them, of which wealth is taken from the young working population, which in theory is supposed to be larger, and used to support the older retired population if necessary. But medical science and modern living has caused the demographic curve to even out. And now those programs, they're not looking so sustainable. So we're losing our most productive minds. I know of a few. They went and they never looked back. And are we able to bear with this loss as our economy, now more than ever, requires diversification? And one of the things that help with diversification is innovation. As a small nation that's trying to compete with other nations and other industries that we haven't even potentially started yet, trying to find a niche, trying to find a new way to do things that will take advantage of our unique circumstances to give us some sort of competitive advantage that we've never had to look for before. We just took the oil out of the ground. That was our advantage. God was our Trini. He gave us what we needed. But that's slowly but surely running out. In fact, maybe quickly running out. Now we need to potentially innovate more in order to not even just get ahead, but to find a new place in the world for ourselves. And losing our, well, not necessarily all, but certainly a significant portion of our best and brightest young minds is not helping. Yes, some of them return home because we do have certain advantages to living here that other developing economies or emerging economies don't necessarily have. but we can't take that for granted that that will be enough. Not now, when we need everybody we can to pull together to help us through this. Well, folks, let's end this there. Although, this does tie in to my next topic. When we return, we will have John Arnold with us. He's the CEO of Tobago Festivals Limited, and here to talk more about lessons learned coming out of Carnival and his experience there with Carnival in Tobago. Stay tuned, WSN Talking Point. We'll be right back.
FanZone, your reliable, authentic supplier, has just gotten better. You can now visit our website www.fanzonett.com for your authentic wear and collectibles. The only place where you can use both your Visa debit and credit cards. Visit our website fanzonett.com to make your purchase today.
The best laptops and tablets are at wesn.com. Get a Gateway 14.1-inch Ultra Slim notebook or an HP 14-inch laptop at the best prices in TNT. Get the Fire 7 tablet for $474. You can also shop the latest Amazon Fire Sticks. Call now at 32-DBEST to order, or visit us in-store at Forces flagship MacBean. Shop online now at dbesttoys.com. Free delivery available throughout Trinidad and Tobago. Cash or links on delivery.
Take some time for yourself or spend some time with the family at Sandy Point Village Hotel. Enjoy our various studio and suite apartments, self-contained with their own kitchenettes and Wi-Fi. We also have our famous 100-foot swimming pool and our beachfront restaurant, the Steak and Lobster Grill. And our location in Crown Point puts us near the center of activity, from the nylon pool to the local nightlife. Call us and make your reservations at 639-8533, 389-2378, or email us at sandypointvillagehotel@gmail.com.
I am Rondell Donowa, attorney at law and host of Strictly Legal on WESN Content Capital. Strictly Legal is a legal program geared towards informing you, the public, of your legal rights, responsibilities, and remedies. So be viewing Thursdays 10 a.m. to 10:30 a.m.
Welcome back to Talking Point, ladies and gentlemen, and I am joined by Mr. John Arnold. He is the CEO of Tobago Festivals Commission Limited. Among other things, those who know will know him to be a man that is, well, I will just say, one of the best when it comes to art and music in the country. I'd like to welcome you, sir, to Talking Point for the first time. Good morning, Mr. Arnold.
Talking Point. Good morning to you and good morning to all the viewers.
So Mr. Arnold, one of the things that I saw coming out of Carnival, and I myself have expressed similar sentiments and want to see it grow. And you specifically pointed out to the late start and extended or the late end times of events happening that you would have personally witnessed. And I think it's safe to say it's not limited to Tobago. We have heard the stories with regards to events in TNT that have suffered the same thing. And this is not necessarily new. Although one might argue some of the lateness this year might have gone beyond Trini time. I think Trini time is not really an hour to 2 hours. One big fete was, I think, 2 to 3 hours late. You lamented that this might be holding us back. You want to just go further with that?
No, I mean, the point I was making, I think the person was trying to figure out if there was a reason. There are always reasons why shows start late. But I think we are getting accustomed to saying it's cultural, meaning that it is collective programming. We are all like that, and so we accept it. I'm just saying that I think it is one of the things to put on the table to attempt just try and start shows on time, despite any things that people tend to wait either on somebody who is important, or sometimes audience has to build up. But I'm saying, out of respect, I think it has to do with respect for the attendees, the audience. And I think that has to be in the mix when we're doing event planning, that we have to look at when we start the show. Because I think it's very important. Respect for artists, respect for judges, respect for everybody. The whole audience is very important to any event. Yeah. So that was the point I was trying to make.
Because you made an interesting point there, because for me personally, I have spent a lot of time behind the scenes in various events. So I'm thinking, why are they late? Are they waiting for somebody? Is something not ready? What went wrong? But we'll get to that later. You just said sometimes they're waiting for audience to build up. Is it that our expectations for ourselves, because that's what it is really, is so low that people are like, nah, I'll go late to the fete. And well, it just snowballs into the fact that the promoter and the planner is looking at there's nobody here. What's the point of us starting? And should this now, we need to tell people, no. Everybody needs to start on time so that we will know not to be late.
Yeah, I think one of the things, I can say from my own personal experience, we have, for example, in my choir, when we have our concerts, I think it's now traditional. We have an MC called Dr. Eastland Mackenzie, Dr. Mac, as she's popularly known. And everybody knows it matters not. She believes if there are 10 people, she starts the program. I've seen her do it so many times that everybody knows once it's publicized that she's going to be the MC, it becomes a norm. So people do attend on time. Because I've seen shows where people came in and the show is ended because it started on time. So I think in little niches, in little pockets, people know who are the people who start things on time. But I think now what we really want to do is to make it common, to make it practice. And I think the more people that adhere to trying to get shows to start on time, it will then become cultural in the other side where, hey, we all got to go on time because that show starts on time. That's my view.
Now, events are not going to be perfect. No event survives contact with its start point. Stuff will always happen. And the bigger an event is, the more complex it is, stuff will always happen. Yeah. So it's not necessarily correct to say, well, we just can't handle it. No. But the flip side is we do seem to have certain issues like the lateness. So that's just one, that's the example, that kind of hold us back. And is it that we really need to try to inject more professionalism? Because with regards to Carnival specifically, I think it has greater potential to attract tourists during that season, both the immediate point in time for Carnival as well as the extended period, right? But then also it goes on now to tourism, because tourism is also, that the wider tourism is an industry that we always peg for diversification, but we just don't seem to really understand how to get it started. And my experience, I do find that we do lack enough professionalism. We have it, we know that we could do it, but it's not widespread enough. And with regards to arts and entertainment, do you think that is also an issue?
Yeah, as an event, I call myself an event professional, meaning apart from the fact I used to teach at a lot and so on, but I've been practicing this for a good while. And I've seen all kinds of myriad kinds of presentations, so much so that after a while, you're able to almost predetermine what can be the outcome, because you remember you're studying demographics, psychographics, you're understanding how people behave, all right? You're understanding the cultural context, the place, the space you're operating in, and so on. So for me, I approach everything as an event, all right? And so the rules that apply to good planning, good research, good design, good implementation, good coordination, they always stay with me. And I think the more we move the industry, and you're right, there is a high level of professionalism in the event industry. As a matter of fact, the event industry can boast about having some highly skilled people in the supply chain. And I think that it's a constant reminder, a constant upskilling, and a constant insistence, right, and persistence in making sure that people adhere to best practice. That's what I try to say to people all the time. We've got to adhere to best practice, because what we want on the outcome is a successful event. And I'm saying if one of the criteria is that we want to know, when we look back at the KPIs, one of the things is we want a successful event. One of the things is we started it on time. What does it take to start the thing on time? Planning, planning, planning.
Well, so in a general sense now, I gave my opinion, but with regards to Carnival, I know Tobago seems to be having the strategy where you all are looking to the October period or end of year period to have a separate carnival, which when you look at this Miami Carnival, this Carnival in Notting Hill, etc., you know, we've seen those things also be a success. Is it that we are underestimating the potential of what Carnival really can do for our economy, and we're not really taking advantage and pushing it as much as we should, pushing the culture, because we're supposed to be, you know, one of the meccas of this whole thing. The steel pan started here.
Yeah, I mean, one of the kudos you have to give the current governance is the fact that the initiative to start the Tobago October Carnival, when you look at festival tourism, the spin-offs, nobody can dispute that, all right? So to develop that where more Trinidadians come to Tobago, more regional persons come to Tobago, more carnival enthusiasts make their way to Tobago, more people from the diaspora come to Tobago, more international visitors now say, well, we want to look at both a great destination and a great carnival. There are several advantages for Tobago hosting an October Carnival. It's a standalone in that all of the Trinidad participants can now look at coming to Tobago and being part either of the spectatorship or being part as a participant. For me, all festivals have this real solid base, which is we want to see heads in bed, we want to see the economy moving. For Tobago, tourism is big. It's our number one industry here. And for me, any event that's going to drive traffic to Tobago and increase, and I mean, when you look at the spin-offs, as you realize, small, there are many, all right? Accommodation sector, the rentals, the groceries, gas stations, small entrepreneurs, everybody, right? And that augurs well for any economy. And so I think the idea of building this carnival that will certainly be a mega festival to redound to real benefits is something we all have to support. The transition, of course, would be, we now have two carnivals in the space. How do we marry the national carnival in February and the standalone carnival? And with time, that is going to work itself out. It's kind of premature to say.
Because my only question is with regards to Tobagonians who might want to partake in carnival during the national carnival period. Perhaps it might be a case where they would go to Trinidad if they want to participate and stay in Tobago if they want to chill out. Because I know Tobago at times in different periods throughout the last 20 years was more of a place where you went to escape carnival as a Trinidadian, as opposed to looking for carnival.
Yeah, so I mean, one has to see the National Carnival as regional. So just as how we have South, Sangre Grande, Arriba, Tunapuna, Tobago has a carnival for several years. But I'm thinking that one of the things, the discussion now has to be how you deal with bang for buck and how you really pan it all out. And I think those discussions with the stakeholders, governance, and everybody, all the players, will continue. And as I said, some kind of model will emerge from all of these consultations. And that's what I see coming out of the two carnivals. At some point, it will settle, and we will see what the new model will be.
Well, I mean, it does make sense because to some extent, Carnival Fest starts as early as August, so even late July. So, having a Tobago festival in October is just, part of the overall near annual calendar. But last question, I want to switch gears just a little bit. My segment before I was talking about brain drain and the issues that we have in TNT. Now, and I think Tobago kind of even gets it more so as a smaller island that's now trying to develop an economy outside now of just taking central government allotments and relying on that. Is that an issue for Tobago that Tobago has to now grapple with or try to find a solution as it's looking to grow its private sector and its economy to some extent independently?
Well, I think brain drain, I think all of us are quite aware that is a phenomenon not new to any of the islands. To a different extent, of course, brain drain happens where people have to take the lure of going to somewhere else where they can better their fortunes, better their education. But I think one of the things we have to put in context, there are many more opportunities now, right? Given online platforms, given virtual space, there are many more opportunities now for persons in Tobago. So that the problems of yesteryear, I don't think that they strike as hard as they are now. And I'm only talking from a personal level. You will still have people that go, people that come, and then you have very strong diasporic ties, with families and so on. The families who make the way for other persons from the family here to go away and develop themselves. And a lot of people come back also. And you also find that a lot of people are coming back. I don't think that, to get back to your core question, brain drain will be something we have to continue as a country to deal with, because I think a lot of it also ties into cultural confidence, how we see where we are, how powerful we feel we can be, and of course QOL, quality of life. So, I mean, these are my personal views, by the way. Let me just make sure I clear that.
Well, I mean, I think a lot of the things you said there, I agree with regards to quality of life. We do see people who might leave coming back, or people moving just in the opposite direction of the expected flow. And as you said, the internet, I have said, is a great equalizer for Tobago. In more ways than one, it really does help out all of our smaller nations, all of our smaller island brothers and sisters. But Mr. Arnold, I want to thank you for coming on and speaking to me with regards to sharing your views. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a man who knows what he's talking about, and he is one of the true gems and professionals of the island. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Have a nice day.
You too, sir. And now, folks, we break for news on the hour. When we return, we'll open up the phone lines and we'll hear from you, the viewer. We'll be right back.
Here's your WESN News on the Hour. I am Denise Martin. Thanks for joining us. Here are the headlines. 2 more firearms seized in Western Division and Northeastern Division. Turnaround in crime expected by June. Opposition leader writes Florida Bar Association. And internationally, more than 100 fared dead in Italy shipwreck. Now for the details. 2 more firearms have been seized in the Western Division. On Saturday, officers of the Western Division Task Force received information, then proceeded to Upper Blue Basin Road, Diego Martin. While searching an abandoned structure, the officers found one 9mm pistol loaded with a magazine containing 2 rounds of 9mm ammunition. Meanwhile, in the Northeastern Division, officers proceeded to Meraldo Street, Santa Cruz, where checks were made at an abandoned house. While conducting a search of the bedroom, the officers found a 1.38 Smith & Wesson revolver, along with 3 rounds of .38 caliber ammunition in a black-colored plastic bag. The Commissioner of Police says she was elated to be appointed as Commissioner. Speaking at a joint select committee, she said there should be a turnaround in murders based on her strategies by June.
We will expect to see a change in the murder rate short term by June and long term by December.
In the wake of the alleged serious misconduct of Attorney General Reginald Amor, which saw him being disqualified from a Miami court, opposition leader Kamla Persad-Bissessar has written to the Florida Bar Association to raise concerns about the conduct of Florida-based law firm Sequoia Law, which acted on behalf of Attorney General Amor versus Burke Hillman, consultant, the Piarco Airport matter. Persad-Bissessar says this complaint is specifically against attorneys Edward Harrison Davis Jr., Christopher Allen Noel, and Arnaldo Benjamin Lacoya of Sequoia Law, and is based on their decision to discuss this matter with and engage Mr. Amor in certain aspects of the case after he disclosed the fact that he was defense counsel for one of the defendants, which is a clear conflict of interest. Separate and apart from this, she said that Amor ought to have recused himself from the onset, knowing that he had previously acted for one of the defendants. In international news now, there are fears that more than 100 people, including children, have died after their boat sank in rough seas off southern Italy. At least 62 migrants are confirmed to have died, with 12 children said to be among the victims, including a baby. The vessel, thought to have carried some 200 people, broke apart while trying to land near Crotone on Sunday. Well, that was your news to the hour on WESN. I am Denise Martin. Thanks for watching.
Welcome back to Talking Point. Ladies and gentlemen, now is the time when we open up the phone lines. Want to hear from you, the viewer, with your views. Of course, if there's anything that you've wanted to talk about and you haven't had a chance for the last couple of episodes, you can call in. What did we speak about today? We spoke about, well, the new commissioner. She gave a timeline that she sees the murder rates to hopefully be impacted, reduce, see some results with that particular statistics. We also spoke about the interesting saga with regards to the alleged senior government official involved in human trafficking, as well as the fact that, look, our murder rates, we're at over 100 murders now. We're at the end of the month, more or less, but we're on pace to beat I believe the previous record, depending on how the trends, if the trends are similar, just increased from last year. We also spoke about brain drain and what that might mean for economy. We had Mr. John Adel speaking about our festival tourism, our capacity for it, Tobago's capacity for it, but also the fact that he thinks that we have our ways to deal with brain drain and it's not so bad now. Although I would argue that now more than ever, we do need all of our best and brightest if we want to get the best results. So it's an interesting time that we live in where we have more advantages, but we also have more needs. Of course, our first caller from San Fernando. Good morning, caller.
Hey, morning, sir. Hello?
Yeah, you're on here. Morning, sorry.
I looked at that, last night I looked at that Joint Select Committee meeting. And one of the things, Sean, that we need to look at are the optics. I found the Joint Select Committee chairman, Mr. Scotland, trying to defend and deflect questions that was being asked from the Commissioner of Police. It was not a nice scene.
Yes.
I gave that committee at best a C for their performance, and that C came about in spite of the contributions by Ms. Butch-Medial and Paul Richards.
Yes.
Who, as far as I'm concerned, were the best two. Mr. Munival and Randall Mitchell, that back and forth ridiculous behavior. That was not called for.
I agree. I more or less agree. Caller, you still with us? I'm not sure if the caller was finished, but we lost the call. If you had another point to make, please call in. We'll try and get you in to make that point. But caller, I agree. Now, here's the thing. I don't necessarily think that Keith Scotland was technically wrong, but like you said, the way how he handled the situation, it was a bad look. It was a bad look. And for the most part, it was unnecessary. It was not no big thing that you were preventing, or it was just very, very procedural. It was a bad look. He shouldn't have done it. The flip side is, at least with regard, I didn't necessarily pay too much attention to the back and forth involving Randall Mitchell. But with Dr. Monilal and his back and forth with the chairman, I found that it was a lot about semantics and it was all about grandstanding, and the actual substance, it's not as though they drilled down to anything. They got to anything pertinent that really was like, yes, this is something we need to hear more about. We have a next caller. Was it the same caller from San Fernando? Okay, caller.
Yes, sure. My second point was the police commission, the police hierarchy. Mrs. Christopher, Mr. Simon, and the rest. They did not, how do I put it? They did not exude any sort of confidence that the public is looking for in the hierarchy of the police service. I am serious. When you have fellows like Inspector Ali and some of the others that I see on the other stations that are out there trying to boost up the public confidence in the police service, and then you see what happened yesterday, I was appalled. I thought Mrs. Christopher, I don't know, Sean. We have a hard deal. I hope the work that they're doing behind the scenes is much better than how they appeared yesterday. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
All right, thank you, caller. It's interesting because that was one of the other takeaways that I got as well. Now, I did say, listen, kind of knew that Earl Christopher coming into the role as Commissioner of Police is not going to be the best public speaker, so I get that. And I emphasize, as somebody who has both I've obviously been in front of the camera, as well as been on a live stage, having to perform in front of a live audience. Done a fair amount of public speaking, not too much, but some. I emphasize, because it's not natural for everybody. It is interesting that you had ambitions to get to that post and did not put any work to try to bring up that shortcoming. But it's not the end of the world. However, I think overall you're right. You know, even if you want to take my perspective, it's hard now to convince people to have confidence in that display, especially when one of the officers got into a war of semantics with Dr. Munilal. And I have to, as much as I said that Dr. Munilal shouldn't be doing that, well, buddy, he is technically an MP. You're in the police office. You need to be a bit more. He was borderline disrespectful. And regardless of what you think of the MP that is questioning you, you know, you have to have respect for that. Yeah, so it was not a good look at multiple times for the TTPS leadership. I have to admit. We have a caller from Shogunas. Good morning, caller. Caller, good. You're live. You're on the air. Go ahead. Caller?
Hello?
Yeah, I think I was hearing in the background, but all right. Well, caller, you could try again, and of course, please, I would encourage people, call in. Let me know what you have to think, what you have to say. Sorry, let me know what you think. Let me know what you have to say with regards to this or anything else. I know that obviously a lot of what we ended up talking about, a lot of what's in the news now is crime and it's depressing. And to some extent, we might not always have anything new to add to the discussion. I did find it interesting, though, that one gentleman, he was on the path to reconciliation, whereas another one, a former murder accused, he potentially lost his life because he was caught up in the life of crime. The very same thing it seemed that the young adult who was charged as a teenager was, I'm hoping, trying to avoid. We do have the caller on the line from Shogunas. Good morning, caller.
Hello?
Morning. You're live. Go ahead. Don't listen to the TV if you listen to TV. I hope there's no delay on the line.
Good morning, gentlemen. Last time, Carmen tried to demolish my argument with pigeon point, quoting that they were restricting access to the beach.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
People used to walk down the beach. I used to walk down the beach and go and bathe there. And you said the extended blocking the access to pigeon point. Well, I don't recall that, but even if that was so, the solution to that is to stop them, because government owned the beach. And I don't know case of that. You also had your guests, your regular guests, indicating a few other hotels, and he's correct. Adamsville was one. Right? The way they were constructed, the only way you could get to that beach is through their property. And they only allowed their guests to do that. But I talk about Singapore and say that no comparison with Trinidad. I think I explained to you Trinidad and Singapore started out the same exact way with Dr. Williams, with enforcing all your laws, reviewing your laws and everything. But we were sabotaged here by Johnny O'Halloran and Francis Quimmer. And when Carl Watson Phillips tried to remedy the situation, Williams did not support Carl. That is the problem. And regarding the final point, you talk about carnival, should government get out of it. What he seemed to forget, government was out of carnival. When I grew up in the private, people used to run carnival. even Port of Spain, or the Chamber of Commerce. And it didn't start off at Carnival. It started off at Beauty Queen competition. And afterwards, they bring in Carnival. Because the government was destroying Carnival. When they had money, they put some enormous prices and whatnot. When they cannot afford to do it, you have a problem. Any questions today?
Well, my one thing is, I'm not too sure who said who mentioned that the blockage into Pigeon Point was extended, but I don't know. I don't think I was the one that said it.
You don't think so? Look back.
But regardless, I do think that happened when the THA took it over, or the government took it over. I'm not sure if that happened under private ownership.
So why did the government take it over? Because they're doing the same thing, and I'm sure they're making a loss.
Well, I don't know. I don't know about the financials of Pigeon Point. I hope that they're not taking a loss, but there was...
anything to be not making a loss.
Well, the thing is that a significant amount of the sand in front of the beachfront, where people would normally enjoy the beach, was a storm more or less moved that to basically around the corner to the end of the point, where it is not as sheltered from the wind, so it's not as nice of an experience. So when I was younger, there was twice as much beach. Basically, there was the sandy beach in front of the bar was twice as much, and that more or less is gone now.
I haven't been to Bigger for a while.
Yeah. Yeah, it was shocking to see Pigeon Point be literally cut in half, or lose half of its sand.
The worst thing to see in Tobago now is the reef. That has been totally destroyed. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you, Sid. I mean, he makes a good point there at the end. To what extent do we not regulate things? We kind of take it for granted. We leave it as a free-for-all. And it's not to say that everybody involved is going to be irresponsible, but you just need a few irresponsible, even just one irresponsible, to cause damage, to cause harm, to decrease the sustainability of a thing. And then we don't necessarily have it for future generations. So I remember when I went on the reef, they had reef sandals, which I didn't understand because I thought you weren't supposed to step on the reef. So it just is what it is. I only went a couple of times when I was younger. I haven't gone recently to see what it's like now, and I'm hoping, given what the caller just said, it won't be like when I went back to Pigeon Point after the storm took half the sand and washed it to the end of the point. I hope it won't be as much or worse of a disappointment to remember what it was and to see what unfortunately is left. But folks, we still have some time. We could take a couple more calls, 628-4578, 623-9376. Sean Michael Small, my co-host Keita Shah, he's under the weather. We're wishing him well. But I would encourage anyone to call in and have their piece. The lessons out of Carnival, I think the unfortunate thing is, coming out of Carnival, it seems as though some people, they want both to see Carnival grow and improve, but they also want to hold on to the traditions. And I'm not too sure if it's easy to kind of have both of those things. They don't necessarily like where the private sector is taking Carnival, but then the government, they don't want to see the government in Carnival. They want to give it to the private sector. So I don't necessarily understand how those two things are supposed to be reconciled. You know, to what extent are you going to reduce government involvement, but also encourage, incentivize, force the private sector to not do things that you don't want to see or you don't like? Because, and talking to people off air, it's actually quite a opinionated, contentious topic. And one discussion that we should have, because the next Carnival season is about, 5 months away? If so long, planning for next year Carnival more or less should already be started. This is why it's a year-round industry. And planning in advance, ideally, would help with regards to the level of execution and professionalism for events. We just had John Arnold speaking about that. We want it to grow. We want to diversify. And this is one aspect where, yes, you will have Miami Carnival and Notting Hill and other carnivals. I get it, Carnival, I think, in Toronto, what have you. But this is one aspect where one of the major points of soca and calypso and steel pan and mass is TNT, and it brings people back, including the people working in the industries. We have a call on the line from Maraval. Good morning, caller.
Good morning, good morning. Listening to your show since last week after Carnival, I just remembered I was checking back. I have been on the Panorama stage for 41 finals. We've won 7 with one band, 2 with another, 14 seconds. But what I want to ask you, the gentleman that was talking about time, I want you to remember, check back something for me. Tobago had medium-sized finals for Panorama. The show started directly at 7 o'clock. A person started talking for 10 minutes. 20 minutes later, they brought on the president of Pan Trinbago. The president of NCC, chairman, 10 minutes. Then they brought on Bali for 10 minutes. Then they brought on the lady in charge of Pan Trinbago for 10 minutes. Then they started Panorama, which is a lot of people talking about why do we have Best Village in Panorama. They start now bringing on this thing that like a Best Village presentation. So the show started at 7 with 12 bands and finished at 1:45. Panorama finals now. We were on the Barber Green because of the position we drew, right? The Kiddies Carnival, I was up there from 8 in the morning to make sure the band was all right. Kiddies Carnival finished close to 4 o'clock, very early.
Yes.
The stage was spotless at 7 o'clock, spotless. The show started at 8:30. Up came the president of Pan Trinbago and lied to the audience. I want you to remember what I'm saying. Saying that the stage was not clean and they're cleaning the stage. 8 hours later, the next morning, she came and she said, no, it was not. And she blamed NCC. She said, you have to blame NCC for this, not Pan Trinbago. Next morning, she came and she said, no, it wasn't the stage. It was the stands with the children with popcorn and all that they had to clean. Where are we going with this? Thank you.
Thank you, caller. Interesting points. I think the second case, I will question the professionalism of the situation and potentially of the people involved with regards to, oh, we blaming this, we blaming that. Well, first of all, if you want to go down the route of saying, don't blame me, blame somebody else, get your story straight at the very least, if you want a mama guys. Or if you have a proper reason, don't whiffle waffle because it's making you look as though either you don't know what you're talking about or you're trying to cover yourself and pass the buck on to somebody else unfairly. Basic things. Don't do that. Have your story straight. If you're being truthful and honest, but you can't be whiffle waffling. But the point before, with regards to the medium band Panorama finals in Tobago, that's interesting. And I think what might have happened there is, and you see, I want to be careful I don't say the wrong thing, but at the end of the day, so you had an event, it's somewhat a big event, you got all of these important people to speak, and then you also had a Best Village production. And I do wonder if somebody, they meant well, but really and truly, a combination of inexperience, as well as perhaps a lot of various stakeholders. I want time to speak, and I want time to speak, and what about this group want to put on a performance? And of course, you're asking why? Why? Now, when political figures get on stage to speak, I'm not saying that anybody did this, but I'm just putting out the general situation. If you get a head of an executive political body to speak. To some extent, you know, you're kind of trapped in the moment of him speaking. You can't, if you tell him 3 minutes, he could take 5 if he wants. What you gonna do? You're gonna get a cane and pull him off? You know, it's not really much you could do. Of course now, if he takes forever, he's gonna look bad. But again, if everybody wanted a certain amount of time, and perhaps it could be inexperienced, you're giving multiple people 10 minutes and you're not really thinking, yeah, it'll add up to half an hour, then you add to an hour, you add that other presentation, and then look, we have over an hour plus of content that has nothing to do with Panorama. So that's the thing with regards to events and professionalism. That's also part of it. Part of it is, look, this is a Panorama event. You have to know how long should an event take, and not go past that point, and not take it for granted. Well, our trainees fed for hours, so they could. No. I mean, when I hear these stories about how long Satan fed, so I found it were ridiculous too. Right? If I as an individual want a party, fine. But if I bought a ticket to an event that's going to take 6 or 7 hours, I'm not going to be happy to either stay way too long if I don't want to stay, or leave and miss out. Because, you know, the show hasn't finished, and one would think the closing of the show will be part of the highlights of the night, which I will miss out because you took too long with your program. Same thing with this Panorama. You know, I would assume wanting to see through the whole competition is the whole point of going, and you're taking too long to start the show. So I'll say this, I don't expect Mr. Arnold to be able to voice some of those complaints, but we didn't go there. But caller, thank you for that, because you're right. These are the sort of things that we were talking about. This is a good example of things that we need to improve upon if we want our product to be taken more seriously. Because when international events go on too long, people complain about it too. And there's a reason why at the Oscars and at the Grammys and all of these big-time award shows, time is key. And they have a whole orchestra to play to get people to hurry up and close, because they need to keep the show moving. And all of these things, having respect for your audience, as Mr. Arnold said, that's where it more or less all comes down to. Now, to what extent now could we? You don't want to lose the good aspects of our culture, but we do want to try to improve where we fall down. Therein lies the trick with regards to making changes in how we do things and how we approach things. It's not always easy. It's not as though that ultra-professional, highly competitive aspect of certain countries, we don't necessarily want all of that down here. But I'll leave that point where it is. More or less, we've reached the end of the show. I want to thank our callers, I want to thank our guests for coming in, having those discussions with me. I hope that we're sparking on talking points, we're making you curious about things, we're sparking some ideas in your brain, encouraging debate. Because at the end of the day, we are going to reach a point where we could say God is a Trinity, all that we want. But to move forward, we will have to figure out how to help ourselves first. We can't take the Lord for granted. More importantly, time waits on no one. And we've made our fair share of mistakes in the past. If we don't improve on them, well, at some point, when the oil money runs out, we can't afford to make the same mistakes again. But it seems as though, for the most part, society is content, and the politicians are more than happy to follow behind. As my coach would say, today is a good day to have a good day. I would say, people, try to make it a great day, not just for yourselves, but for the people that you meet today. And we will see you tomorrow. Goodbye.
WESN.
Vladimir Zelensky says the situation in the city of Bakhmut on the eastern front line is becoming extremely difficult by the hour. This as forces from Russia's Wagner group try to encircle the town in the Donetsk region. According to Kiev, Russia is trying to cut supply lines and force Ukrainian troops to either surrender or withdraw. Lisa Kamenov reports.
In this tent, the remaining residents of Bakhmut seek shelter, warmth and contact with the outside world. Their city has become the latest epicenter of a vicious battle between Russian and Ukrainian forces.
My daughter lived near Bakhmut. I haven't heard from her for a month. I think she left because the meat factory there was bombed. I don't know if she is alive or not. We don't have a network or anything. Thank God this place was made so we can do laundry and wash ourselves.
In this ghost city, most of the buildings have been destroyed and over 80% of the population is gone. Meanwhile, the Russian army continues to shell villages in the north, south and east of Bakhmut.
In the Bakhmut direction, the situation is constantly becoming more difficult. The enemy is constantly destroying everything that can be used to protect our positions for fortification and defense. Our soldiers defending in the Bakhmut direction are real heroes.
The battle for Bakhmut has been the longest standing one since the beginning of the Russian offensive. Though the city itself presents no major military significance, the control of Bakhmut has become symbolic for both the Ukrainians and the Russians.
And joining me now from Warsaw is Marina Zolkina, the head of regional security and conflict studies at the Democratic Initiatives Foundation. Thank you very much for your time. It's clear Russia is trying to encircle Bakhmut and force Ukraine to pull out its troops. Which, of course, would give Moscow its first major victory in more than half a year. But are they likely to succeed?
So Russia is trying to capture this city for almost 1 year so far after the large-scale invasion started. So as of now, there is no evidence that Ukrainian armed forces are being withdrawn from Bakhmut. And basically, this is not, first of all, military, but more political, let's say, goal for Russia to have at least some successes. Because starting from last July 2022, actually, Russia had no successes on the ground. Only Soledar, but in terms of Donbas, Soledar is just a village.
What do the Ukrainians need in terms of military assistance to push back the Russians in that part of the country?
In that part of the country, Ukraine urgently needs ammunition to heavy artillery because right now the balance between how many armor Russian forces have and Ukrainian forces have are at least comparable. So previously Russians had, for instance, like 40,000 shells per day, while Ukrainians had the capacity of 10,000 shells.